watches every time. So she always tells me if it started late, if it cut off early, if I said something she couldn't understand. So she's my quality control at home, so hopefully she made it home in time to watch. So like I said, I'm Dr. Shannon. The doctor part of my name is from a chiropractic degree, so I'm a chiropractor. That's how I started off in the field of healthcare and helping people. And I started off because I wanted to help people improve their health without drugs and surgery. I realized that at a really young age. I'll tell you my story a little bit later because it actually relates to what we're going to talk about tonight and how I got into chiropractic in the first place. But I set out to do that, and I started into practice back in 2002, and I realized pretty quickly that I was missing some tools. I could help some people with some problems, but I didn't have all the tools in my toolbox that I needed to help everybody. My goal was I'm going to help everybody not take drugs and avoid surgery and be really healthy. I didn't really know how to do that. I knew how to adjust people the way we learned in school, and I got pretty good results, but not awesome results. So then I went back to school and got training in nutrition response testing, and that's what you were seeing on the TV up here. Some of you have experienced it firsthand, and some of you haven't, but that's what we do here in the office, and Emily's going to demonstrate that for you tonight, explain how it works, and then we're going to talk about how it relates to not only your overall health, but also mental health. So that's the topic of tonight's lecture, right? So when I went back and learned about nutrition, and then came back into practice and applied that, I started to get tremendous results in all areas. So in the area of mental health, in the area of hormone problems, in the area of digestive problems, in addition to helping people with their headaches and their pain and their structural issues. So that's why I do what I do, and that's why we're excited around here to have as many people as possible learning about health, learning about nutrition, learning about how to improve, and then go out and tell everybody you know, your friends and your family, right? So we can help more people, because really healthcare in this country is not so great. Most people don't know how to eat well and to take care of themselves to a point where they could really be healthy without drugs and surgery, right? So in order to do that, we have to be educated, so that's what we're here for. So like I said, we're here for your questions, but I'm going to turn things over to Emily, because she's going to go into the meat of the lecture, and then she'll probably let me back up a little bit later. So Emily she's really in training. She's a long way through your training. You only have a couple more courses to go, but she's starting to see patients here in the office, so she's a practitioner of nutrition response testing now. So she's taking on new clients, so you can also tell your friends about that. So starting in a couple of weeks, but she's been going down to Florida every month for many, many months, doing intensive training so she can learn how to do what we do around here. She's great. She's my practitioner, so there you go. She must be good if I let her check me, I don't let just anybody check me. All right, so without further ado, she's going to come up and tell you her story and get started, okay? All right, we'll trade spots.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Emily.
Hi, everybody. All right, so like she said, my name's Emily, and I'm the newest practitioner at Thrive. And hi, Lavender. Come right in. So my story and kind of how I can relate to mental health is actually one of the reasons that I started coming into Thrive. I had really bad anxiety, just graduated college, had anxiety through college, just suffered with, social stress. It affected my relationships, friendships, everything like that. And I didn't know exactly what was causing it. I just thought it was, college, so stressful. So then I came into Thrive, did a checkup and everything, and found out that some things were coming up that can actually cause a bit of mental stress on the body. And as soon as I got those all fixed up, I don't have anxiety anymore, which is amazing. And I sleep better, I feel better, I can go to work every day, I have great relationships with people in my life. So nutrition response testing has definitely turned around my anxiety from the worst to little to nothing at all. So that's kind of my personal story with that. And then tonight we're just going to be talking about the topic of mental health. So that can mean anything from anxiety, depression, brain fog, insomnia, anything from like mood swings even. So those are all symptoms, okay? So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to draw a little triangle on this whiteboard here. And we're going to have the 3 points on our triangle. Up here is going to be the symptoms. So like I said, that's anything that I just mentioned above that you could be struggling with in your life. Then down here we have organ dysfunction. And over here in this corner, we're going to have nutritional deficiencies. Triangle is because when we move one part of the triangle in one direction, it can pull the other corners in another direction as well. So, for example, you have your symptoms going on, and if they're really a problem in your life, then we can kind of assume that these two corners are also going to be out of whack as well. So it's all connected in a way, okay? So clinically, what we repeatedly find in every patient here. Sounds good. So this little guy here, I'm going to touch both ends at the same time because I have energy, electricity, any type of word like that can be used. Promise we're not all woo-woo energy here. Electricity works good. So I'm going to touch this end, and then just with the electricity from my body, I'm going to touch the other end, and this little guy lights up, okay? So when we're working on patients here, what we're doing is we're testing their body's energy or electricity. Hi, Angie. Come on in. So what we're going to do is we're going to be testing those organs and areas to see what energy or
Go ahead and grab a chair over there. You can put them right over here.
what energy is there or what energy is lacking. In this case is what we're going to be looking for. So I'm going to show you how my connection with my energy can also connect with Dr. Shannon's, okay? So I'm going to have you touch one end, and then I'm going to touch the other end, and then I'm going to have you touch my palm with your fingers. So our energies are connecting. It's so fun. So that's just an example of kind of how the system works here, okay? And how we're reading energies. The way we're using energy is through touching different organs and areas on the body that could be under stress. So if she's not under much stress standing up here in a pretty normal state. So as most of you know, if you've done muscle testing, we use the arm as our little lever, we could call it. So I'll have you stick your arm out. And since she's not under any stress or anything like that, I should be able to push on her arm and it should stay strong, okay? So that's what we want to see first. And then let's say I'm testing her and I find her, since we're talking about mental health, I'll go ahead and touch her frontal lobe, okay? So that's just the front part of the brain right here. And then if she's under stress here, what's going to happen is I'm going to push and her arm's going to go weak, okay? So that's just saying the body is letting me know that area needs some attention. So what we do then is we distinguish if that needs to be taken care of first, and if the body lets us know that, then we handle that. We handle that with nutritional supplements, okay? So these little guys are in glass vials, so the energy can come through the glass vial just like you can feel the energy from the sun come through a window. So you still feel the warmth of the sun, you still feel the light, so the supplements in these containers are coming through the glass like that, and our body's reading that, okay? So if I give her this, and let's say this is something that maybe isn't the right supplement for her frontal brain, I would touch this and it would still go down. If I take that and switch it out for something that is great for her brain, I'm going to put it in her hand and I'm going to touch her brain and it's going to stay strong, okay? Because this is something that her body likes, her body needs, and it's what the deficiency is in, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. All right.
It's exciting.
I know, right? Okay.
All right?
Yeah, all right,
Okay.
all set. So, then we're going to talk about this little triangle here. So, okay. So, we have sugar. Okay. And then the way this can relate to your mental health, actually, once you sit and think about it, you know, you can kind of start to relate to things that are going on in your life and realize, you know, that if that's happening to you, then you can start to connect that food and body connection in your daily life. So sugar depletes the body of nutrients, and it also changes your blood sugar. So when your blood sugar spikes when you're eating things like ice creams or cookies or anything like that, you're gonna have kind of like an up or an high from that high blood sugar spike. Well, the thing about that, when it's that type of sugar, it's gonna also crash really fast. So you're gonna come down as fast as you went up. So, you know, if you have a pop at 10, at noon you could be ready for bed, and that's not what we want at all. So that also can stem some anxiety. So anxiety, you know, everyone's like, oh, I just feel really flustered and, you know, I need to get things done and I'm too anxious about things. Well, the anxiety can stem from the change in the blood, the sugar in your blood, okay? So if you're eating too much sugar, then your blood spikes and then it drops, you're gonna have that feeling of anxiousness. And then you're gonna also be craving it more because, you know, when you eat the sugar, your body wants more sugar because it thinks that's what it needs, when that's actually not very accurate at all. So during this time, you're also gonna be having those cravings, and then you're gonna be depleting those nutrients, and those organs are going to be suffering, and then you're gonna be showing symptoms like anxiety, depression, fatigue, all of those things. So we can talk about depression especially. Depression is a very common occurrence within the United States, unfortunately, and a lot of people suffer with it. So what we like to do around here is we like to find out, you know, what's going on, and depression is usually fatigue. So what we like to find out is, where is the fatigue coming from? Is it coming from your liver? Is it coming from your frontal brain? We won't know until you get tested, but we would actually be able to find out which area is fatigued and then why it is fatigued. So then that's kind of completing that triangle. And then other things can be, besides sugar, can be hurting your body that's in our everyday environment. So we consume things like toxins and MSG, GMOs, food dyes, additional flavors in our food, and those things are also harmful to the body. So all of these things can lead to a lack of sleep as well, which can in turn make your depression, your anxiety, your brain fog, all of that much worse. Or what happens is the lack of sleep is what caused the anxiety, the depression, the brain fog to set on. So those go hand in hand usually. And so what we need to do is find, again, what's causing that problem. So, you know, if you're anxious and you're trying to get better sleep, it doesn't work too well when you're trying to go to bed and you're feeling anxious. It's really hard to sleep that way. And, you know, the body is on 24/7. So the fact that we have to take care of it, it's a very well-oiled machine. And, you know, you wouldn't buy a Lamborghini and then put really bad gas in it. You want to take care of that really fine piece of machinery, just like you want to take care of yourself and you want to take care of your body. So you want to make sure you're giving it the right nutrition so that it can support you physically and mentally. So what we have also in our gut are called neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitter, we'll just break up the word first. So neuro is brain, transmitter is sending a message. So in our gut, you believe it or not, we have things that send messages to our brain. So what happens is we have serotonin in our gut, and our serotonin is a neurotransmitter, and that controls things like sleeping, appetite, mood. All of that can be a part of serotonin. So this can get disturbed by the things we eat, because the only thing that's touching your gut is what you're putting in your mouth. So that just makes sense that would affect that mood right there. So 95% of the serotonin neurotransmitters are found in your gut. So they're sending the signals to your brain. So if we disturb them, kind of makes sense, they go hand in hand. If they're disturbed, we might feel a little bit off of not ourselves. So these neurons or neurotransmitters are highly influenced by good bacteria that make up your intestines. So good bacteria do a few things. First, they provide a barrier against toxins. They protect you from the bad bacteria, and they improve how well you absorb nutrients to get them to your organs. So again, if you're not absorbing the right nutrients or any nutrients at all, you're going to have organs in areas that are dysfunctioning because of this. And then come your symptoms. So things like antibiotics, antibacterial soaps, birth control pills, and acids, all of these things can disturb your normal gut flora, we'll call it. Okay, those are all the good bugs and those neurotransmitters that need to do their job right. So all of those things can disturb that, along with the toxins that we mentioned before. So anything like MSG, any chemicals you're in contact with, anything you're putting on your skin or eating. So what does this mean for you? So what I recommend is you can start paying attention to how you feel after you eat. Do you feel bloated? Do you feel tired? Do you feel irritated? Do you want to hit somebody in the face? You never know. if you're mad after you eat, this is not a good thing. So pay attention to those stressors, okay? Those are your body telling you that something is wrong. And that's a huge cue on how you can, critique your diet on your own. Just really listen to how you're feeling afterwards. And the thing is, unfortunately with food can affect us 3 days after we've eaten it. So if you're on a program, your favorite thing when you come in here is to do a food log. So that is why it's so important, because when we're looking at your food logs, we want to see, you had a headache yesterday, but that doesn't mean it's from something you ate. You were really happy one day and then you were super depressed the next 2 days. Well, we want to look at that food log as far back as, your last visit, and see what you've been eating and see if we can give you any recommendations based off of what we find. And then also, kind of back to the blood sugar thing. I know we talked about it going up and down. What I can recommend with that is you don't want to quit that cold turkey. So I know everyone wants to just hop right on the health bandwagon and, no more carbs for them. Well, you might also, again, want to slap somebody in the face. So make sure that you slowly come down from where you are at. So a good thing to do is just kind of portion down. So if you're having 5 pops a day, maybe 1 week you do 4, and then the next week you do 3, because your body is going to be accommodated to what you're giving it. So, whether or not it's not good food or good food, it's going to be having to run the show somehow. So it's used to that pop you're giving it, and it's going to use that energy system to fuel itself. So if you just kind of smack it in the face with a spinach salad, it's going to be like, what the heck is going on? I'm used to pop. So even though the spinach salad is a much better choice. So that's another thing that is a little tip. Don't just cut it out cold turkey, kind of start weaning down. And then along with the food sensitivities to different things, with nutrition response testing, it's really easy for us to find what you are sensitive to and if something is actually bothering you. If we find that, you know, your frontal brain was not testing optimally, we can actually find what's stressing it out, and that could be a food sensitivity. And wouldn't it be nice to know that if you were sensitive to even tomatoes? Sometimes our bodies are sensitive to healthier things that we think are good for us, but actually they're more so hindering us than helping, and that can contribute to the way you're feeling, you know, the anxiety, depression, and brain fog. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Shannon.
Good job.
Yeah.
All right. All right, good debut. Great job.
She's been preparing for a couple days.
Yes.
So when it comes to sugar, just like she said, you know, sugar will cause nutrient deficiency. So it's what we call an anti-nutrient. So it actually pulls nutrients out of the body. So you can have a beautiful spinach salad, to use for example. You can have this beautiful organic diet where you're eating tons of nice vegetables and, you know, pastured meats and all this wonderful things. And then at the end of the day, you have sugar, and basically you've just wiped out all the good that you did. You know, you might kind of come out even, but you're not really going to get ahead, because it's actually, your body's going to have to pull all those good nutrients you ate to process the sugar. Wah wah. Okay. Yes, sir.
Does this include fruit?
It can include fruit. Yeah, it depends. So it definitely includes fruit juice. So fruit juice is just as much, if not more, sugar than a soda pop or a Snapple or anything like that. So, and it's usually very highly processed. So the exception to that might be if you took an orange and squeezed the juice out of it yourself and drank it. Okay. But most, you know, even orange juice, even if you were to make a glass of orange juice, that's like, I don't know, 6, 8 oranges, depending on how, what the quality is, right? So we recommend whole fruit, definitely. Some people can tolerate it better than others. It really depends on your current state of health. It depends on how much of the sugar you've had over your lifetime. You know, so if you were raised on sugar cereal and Pop-Tarts, then you probably at some point in your life will have trouble tolerating sugar, even to the point of you might not be able to tolerate fruit. If you have a chronic immune challenge, like somebody who's, you know, got a viral, like hepatitis or something like that, or something, you know, along those lines, autoimmune diseases, they're going to have to be careful with even fruit sugar until at least their body's stronger. Exactly. Thanks. Good question. So that's fructose, right? That's in fruit. So definitely, I will say, always more vegetables than fruit. So we like to say, eat your fruits and vegetables. That's what we say, we, like society. Eat more fruits and vegetables. Well, fruits should not be first. It should be eat more vegetables and occasionally have a little fruit. So everybody's sort of like, well, I'm eating more fruit because it's portable and I like it. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's still better than cookies. However, yeah, the vegetable part is usually where most of us fall down, right? It takes more work. We don't love it. I will tell you, the less sugar you eat, the more you like vegetables. Yeah, anyone's experienced that? Neil has, I know. Yeah, so that's an absolute given. I used to hate vegetables. I liked iceberg lettuce, which is basically water. It's not really technically a vegetable. And I think I liked red pepper because that's super sweet, and cucumber because that's mostly water also. So those were the only 3 vegetables I ever liked. And that was not until I was in my 20s. I didn't really like any before that. And then I started to clean up my diet, you know, stop drinking so much beer, cut out some of the bread. Whatever. I'm from Michigan. I went to Michigan State. What are you gonna do? We drank a lot of beer, you know. I don't know. I'm German somewhere along the line, 11% or something. But when you cut those things out, your taste buds will change. So one of the reasons why we have so much trouble getting kids to eat healthy food, is because most of them have too much sugar too early. All the sugary foods in our society are geared towards kids. And when you want to look at, kind of pull the string and look back and like, what's the reason why all these kids are on Adderall and ADHD medication? I can tell you, because I see it all the time, sugar. And all the stuff that goes into processed foods. Emily mentioned genetically modified foods. She mentioned MSG, which is monosodium glutamate. It's an additive. Most of us think of it in Chinese food, right? That's how you've heard of MSG. Causes upset stomach and headache for some people. But it also is a stimulant. So sugar is a stimulant, right? You've seen, all kids know. If you say like, why are you running around so crazy? They're like, I ate too much sugar, right? Every kid will tell you that. They're like, because I ate so much sugar. And then they like 5 minutes later have a meltdown, right? They're a good example of this exact thing that we're talking about here. As adults, we don't really behave that way. We have to be sort of civilized. So instead, we're like super anxious on the inside, and then we're like depressed and irritable. But it's the same thing. It's not different. The kids just show it outwardly because they don't have control over it. So you give the kid a bunch of sugar, and he runs around crazy and acts like a crazy person, throws stuff at his siblings and hits them and stuff, and then crashes on the floor crying. Right? Did you see the kids do? I used to do that when I was a kid. I was totally sugar sensitive, terrible sugar bug. Mostly starchy stuff. Like I was more of a macaroni and cheese kind of girl, but we all have our thing. But it's the same mechanism in adults. It just manifests a little differently. But that's what you're seeing. Those highs and lows that she's talking about. The anxiousness, the irritability, that's sugar. And it comes in different forms. So for some of us, it's cookies and sodas and cakes. And for some of us, it's bagels and pastas and even oatmeal. So things that we've been taught are good for us. Bran cereal, like don't even bother. It's gross anyway, right? So don't bother with cereal. Cereal's like, even if it's like the healthy stuff, it's garbage. It's super processed, and then they just add a bunch of vitamins back into it. Even if it doesn't have sugar listed as an ingredient at the top, it's somewhere in there. And it turns into sugar once you eat it. So you're much better off with eggs, bacon if you dig it. You don't have to have it, but it's kind of nice. So eggs, bacon, something in the form of protein and fat. Those are the things that are going to stabilize your health. I got to stick on the kids a little bit. So did anybody, go ahead, Donnie.
Guys, I help out at our church with our junior high and senior high. And they're wonderful kids. They look healthy, but they've got anxieties and fears. They even said to me last Sunday, they don't sleep very well. And I said, guys, get away from some of that junk food that you eat. But, and it bothers them because, fears. Think about that. That's almost leading to depression, isn't it? When you're afraid of...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so, and that is, I see more and more in younger and younger people. So high schoolers are under a tremendous amount of stress.
Yes.
All kids, but the further they go in schooling, the more stress they're under. College applications, like all the stuff that they have to do. And their schedule is way too jam-packed. I'm going to say that about y'all too, adults, okay? But kids will manifest it much more severely. And I see this all the time. They don't get enough sleep. So kids are supposed to get at least 10 hours of sleep. Like a teenager should get at least 10 hours of sleep. That's actually normal. That's why you're so, people get frustrated when teenagers sleep in all weekend long. That's because they didn't sleep enough during the week, but they should have. They should have gotten more. So, infants on up, they're still requiring a lot more sleep. They're growing, their hormones are changing, a lot of stuff going on. So without enough sleep, the very first thing that happens is they feel anxious. And they crave sugar and caffeine. So then what do they have? They have caffeinated latte, 450 calorie Starbucks with whipped cream on top, right? Do you think that causes anxiety? Yeah, it does. I'll just fill you in. It does. Spoiler alert. So yes, too much caffeine, too much sugar, but it's a vicious cycle. They're in that same cycle. But it starts very young, especially in our country, because all the kid foods are just garbage. There's no nutrition in them. They're all chemicals, which are stimulants, and food colorings, which are stimulants, and sugar. So this is not to depress you and be like, oh no. But the next generation, it's not going to look so good if we don't do something about it, right? So you got to work on, if you got kids and grandkids, then this is a message they need to hear. And the other thing they don't need, what it is not, is an Adderall deficiency or medication deficiency. It just isn't. What it is they need a little more exercise, fresh air, not have to sit in front of a screen so long, right? Screen time, huge cause of anxiety. And then you throw in the sugar and you throw in the caffeine. There's a lot of that. And for adults, it's watching the news. So I can't tell you how many people I've solved their insomnia by telling them not to watch the news. And or get on Facebook and or get on, you know what I'm saying? like all the bad stuff that people want to tell you about in the world, it'll still be there in 2 weeks when you turn it back on. I promise. It won't have changed at all. I've done an experiment before, like 1 month, no news, no social media, and you get back on and you didn't miss a thing. In a month, nothing changes. Like the faces might change, but the story's the same. And if there's a tornado coming, your friends will tell you. Like everyone's like, well, I won't know what's going on in the world. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe that's good. Yeah. In a way. It's good for your mental health, right? Short term. And then if it's something really emergent where you really like need to take shelter, yeah, you got buddies for that. That's cool. Somebody will tell you. You're not going to be like flying around like Dorothy and everyone else is safe, It's fine. You got peeps. They'll look out for you. One thing I was going to say before, Neil, what was it? I have it. It'll come back to me. That's okay. So I'm going to tell you my story, and the reason I even became a chiropractor in the first place absolutely has to do with mental health. So when I was 13, I went from being a straight A student, lots of friends, small town, so I was, social, had good social groups and all that, to having panic attacks. So I started the 7th grade with these panic attacks, and I couldn't stay in school. I would go to school, and I would get into such a panic, like I just could not control. I didn't know where it was coming from. There was nothing I was actually scared of. Like I didn't have a why, it just came out of nowhere, like a truck. I couldn't control it. And in my mind, I was thinking, what is wrong? Why do I feel this way? I'm not scared, but I couldn't breathe. I would hyperventilate. It was horrible. My mom would have to leave work, come and pick me up because I couldn't stay. And this happened for every day for weeks. Like the first 2 weeks of school, I missed 10 days. So then I'm at the point where I'm only 2 weeks into school, and they're like, you're going to flunk out. Like you're not going to make it. We're not going to be able to pass you, and we're only 2 weeks into the semester, so what's going on? So she took me to the medical doctor, and they did blood work, and it was normal because there was nothing wrong with me, of course, right? And then they took me to another doctor and showed him the blood work, and he said, yes, it's normal. But I was 13, so it's like hormone time, right? So everybody thinks, well, it's your hormones, which was partly true, but nobody really had a solution for it, other than, well, she's 13. It's like, well, yeah, but, I didn't just like get hormones in a day, like I went from fine to not fine. And my third stop was a psychiatrist, and he said after, look, she's not in the medical field. The medications were relatively new at the time. She didn't know a lot about them, but she said, it doesn't make sense to me. She was fine, and now she's not. She didn't develop a deficiency of medication overnight. Like that's not what happened. So the next step was actually my chiropractor. And I had a chiropractor. Everybody in my town had a chiropractor. It's just the thing to do. Like it's like farming town. So everybody got, I got back pain, I go to the chiropractor. So we had a chiropractor, and I went, and he looked at my blood work, and he said, it's not fine. There actually is something wrong. I was either going to flunk out of school, end up on a bunch of medications. Who knows? I was not going to be well functioning from that point forward. So he got me back on track, and that was, I had one of those sort of epiphany, like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help people just like he did, which is what I do now, which is pretty cool, right? But when I got into practice, what had changed from the time that I was 13 till I was in practice is that the food supply and the nutritional value of the food that people are eating has gotten so bad so quickly that I was not able to produce as much of the miracles as he was able to. He was able to just adjust my spine, and I went home, and even though I was eating macaroni and cheese, it wasn't genetically modified. It didn't have as many chemicals in it as it does today. So even though mac and cheese wasn't great back in the 80s, it's really bad now. Does that make sense? Yeah, like the corn syrup from the 80s is really bad now, because now we have all the pesticides, the glyphosate that's added in. It's genetically modified. There's more chemicals. It's a problem. So it basically had escalated to a point that just adjusting somebody when that's going on wasn't enough. We need to actually address more of the underlying cause, really like feed the thyroid. So I continued to have issues with my neck a long time until I actually fixed my thyroid with minerals and the right supplements. So even though I did significantly better, I really, really got it handled once I got into nutrition. So anyway, that's my story. So I have a wonderful understanding of exactly what it feels like to be completely out of control of your mental state and not really understand why. Now there's stressors in life, normal stressors, right? I mean, especially like I said, we're all like way overworked and too much on our plates and going, not getting enough sleep, maybe not feeding ourselves well enough. So all those things can accumulate, and then on top of that, you get, something that happens, some stress that happens in your life. That's going to be the case. But you can handle it much better if your body's in good shape, if you have good nutrition. So if you're feeding yourself well, and your organs are doing well, then what we find is you're better able to handle stressful life events, and you don't completely just crash and end up in a deep depression or anxiety. It's actually normal to experience those things. It's normal to experience grief. It's normal to experience depression if there's a reason for it, right? So I think we have a tendency to think like it's abnormal if we have something bad happen and then we feel bad. It's not. It's totally normal. What isn't normal is to get stuck in that and not be able to get out of it. It's not normal to be like, well, because I've seen people over the years and they say, well, I had a loss and that was 20 years ago and I've never recovered. That's because they never got the nutrients that they needed for their body to rebuild. They got just sort of stuck in that. Does that make sense? You understand how that could be? Yeah. So I'm not saying that there's not a real thing called depression and anxiety. Those are real things. But what we want to do is make sure the body's in good physical health before we just sort of slap a label on you. And then on top of that, give you a medication that could potentially cause more serious side effects and be very altering to our long-term health. So I'm not going to go really deep in depth on medications, but I will say that especially in children, they're very damaging, and they have a lot of long-term consequences as far as how the brain works and how the hormone system is balanced. So that's something that I object to, unless it's absolutely positively the very last resort, because a lot of times we just have to fix the diet. And it's hard, it's hard to get kids off sugar and eat protein and get enough sleep. It is, but it's totally worth it because you get a totally different person in front of you. I know I'm talking about kids, but I'm really talking about all of you. Just saying. I just disguised it as children because everybody gets on board with that. Yeah, save the kids. But you gotta save you too. You're worth it too. You gotta get enough sleep. If you're having trouble sleeping, there's things that can help with that, right? So we like Lavender Essential Oil. So really good lavender essential oil is amazing for helping people fall asleep, or just to help you relax. So even during the day, if you tend to get a little bit stressed out, somebody's bugging you, the phone's ringing too much, or too many text messages coming in, right? So a tax man's knocking at your door, I don't know. Whatever's stressing you, lavender essential oil can help. I know, you're a business owner, I get it. Then you have, yes ma'am?
How do you use the essential oil?
How do you use the essential oil? Good question. So it comes, you can get it with a roller lid on it, but you don't have to have that. So it depends on whichever one you have, a roller lid or a dropper lid. And basically on the inside of your wrists, on your temples, and then take a nice deep breath. So you kind of rub it on your hands and your wrist. Breathe it in. Deep breath alone will probably do the trick sometimes. But you can add the lavender oil and it'll make you feel like, it'll remind you to breathe. That's the other thing we tend to do is hold our breath when we get a little bit stressed. That can cause anxiety. Not enough oxygen. I'd feel anxious without enough oxygen. So that's how you can do it. And at nighttime, a little bit on your feet as well, bottom of your feet for sleep. Another thing we love, and people, there's probably at least someone in this room who loves it, is our topical magnesium. Does anybody here use that? Yeah, do you like it? Yeah, does that help you sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Have you used it?
I just started yesterday.
You just started, yes, that's right. I just gave it to you yesterday. Okay, good. I look forward to hearing how you like it. But lots of our patients come in and they say, I'm having trouble falling asleep, restless legs, that kind of thing, like they just can't sort of get settled down. Topical magnesium, so it gets actually absorbed into the skin through your feet and through your legs, is usually where we have you put it. Very calming to the nervous system. So the number one thing that gets depleted from your body when you're eating too much sugar, either before or now, is minerals, particularly magnesium. So if we don't have enough magnesium, we feel anxious, we feel agitated. Restless legs is often a magnesium deficiency. So there's lots of natural solutions. It's not, one size fits all, but really what we want to impress upon you guys is that there is a solution most of the time for these types of situations, okay? So we can help. We help people all the time. So I have lots and lots of success stories other than myself and other than Emily, but we're two good examples of the anxiety really being handled by getting onto the right program. So if you know somebody who's suffering with anxiety, depression, insomnia, please send them in. At least let them get on Facebook and see us talk about that we can help. You don't have to be the one to tell them that they can't eat sugar. We'll do it. It won't work anyway, so just let us do it. I can't tell you, they're like, I'm going to bring my kid in because I've been telling him for 10 years he can't eat sugar, and he doesn't listen to me, but he'll listen to you. That works. Husbands, wives, all of the above. So we're happy to be the bad guys and make them fix their diet, but we're also happy to help. Okay? Any questions? Any specific questions that you have about anything we talked about tonight? No? Is it helpful? Yeah? No one's going out for ice cream after this? Yeah.
I have one question, because I think when Emily was talking, she said something about antibacterial soap.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Do you want to address the question? You want me
You're
to?
up there, go
oh,
for
here
it.
I am. So antibacterial soap does exactly what it sounds like. It's against bacteria. So there's chemicals in there that will kill bacteria. The problem is that it'll kill all bacteria. And a lot of the bacteria that we have on our bodies, so in our bodies and on our bodies, we're covered in it, by the way. Covered in bugs. You don't have to think about it in that as bugs, but that's what we are. We're covered in bacteria and viruses and things like that. And they protect us from the bad bugs, all right? So you hear about these hospital-acquired infections, like people get C. diff and things like that. Have you heard of that before? No? Okay. So there's these like nasty infections, and they're mostly you get them when you go to the hospital, because that's where the really strong bugs live, because they use antibacterial everything. So they use hand sanitizer, antibacterial soap, they sterilize everything. So only the really strong bugs survive that. So then you have these like really they call them super bugs. That's actually what they're called. So they can survive anything, including antibacterial soap. But the good bugs on your skin that protect you cannot survive antibacterial soap. So we basically strip off our protective layer of bacteria when we use antibacterial soap, antibiotics, things like that in our environment. So I don't recommend using bleaches and antibacterial things in your house, because you actually want bacteria. If you have like a pet in your house, it actually protects it, makes your immune system work better. Bugs in it, it's much more dangerous to have those chemicals in your environment than to have some bacteria. They're gonna be like, Dr. Shannon said we should drink out of the toilet. Dr. Shannon said I don't have to clean the house because it's supposed to be dirty. I can already hear it. Yeah, but so it doesn't have to be. It's a problem, and it's actually one of the things that we find today is that some of the superbugs, the reason they exist is because of the amount of antibiotics used in animal husbandry. So the raising of animals, we use more antibiotics in this country than any other country, and most of them are used on animals. So to be able to make cows that live in way too close of unhealthy quarters healthy enough to pass inspection, so we inject them with loads and loads of antibiotics, all those antibiotics come to us in the meat, okay? That's why we talk about things like healthier meats and healthier eggs and things like that, because those antibiotics will affect our good bugs. It's crazy, right? Okay, don't be scared. But so yeah, leave a little bit of dirt, leave a little bit of bugs, it's all right. Don't bleach everything, don't antibacterial everything, because it's not really to your advantage. Yes, sir?
When Emily mentioned serotonin being produced in the gut, is any specific part of the gut, or is it the entire stomach, large intestine, small intestine?
Yes, it is a certain part. Do you remember? I think it's small intestine, but
Yeah, it was small, I think so too.
yeah.
Yeah, because it said in the flora in there.
Yes. So you're going to get more of the flora is in the small intestine, like in the last part of the small intestines. I think that's where it is, but I'm not 100% sure. There is one part. It's true.
Is there a certain nutritional approach to get those neurotransmitters back up? Certain foods that you can specifically?
Yeah, so making sure that your gut health is supported is key, right? So we talked a little bit about obviously the things to avoid, right? It's all doom and gloom around here. Nothing good to eat. Having fermented foods is very, very supportive of gut health and then therefore mental health. So we're talking about things like sauerkraut, kombucha, kefir's good, yeah. Depending, not everybody can tolerate dairy, but it is a fermented food and a lot of people do well on it. Kimchi, apple cider vinegar, yeah, those types of things will improve it. Having enough fiber in your diet, because that supports the bugs being able to grow and basically set up shop.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then avoiding chemicals that we talked about as much as possible. I mean, you can't 100% avoid them because they're in our environment, but, you know, not like calling in True Green to spray your lawn. Sorry if anybody works for True Green. Sorry. But, you know, not having your lawn sprayed every 2 days with a crap ton of pesticides. I mean, it's just not, it's not helping anybody. It's certainly not helping our neighbors or our water supply, you know, things like that. Those are the biggest things. Yeah, just avoiding sort of breaking it down, and then your body will do the rest. You know what I mean? If you're not constantly trying to get in its way, the body's pretty miraculous. I mean, we see miraculous things happen around here just by changing somebody's diet, and the reason for that is because these bodies they're self-healing mechanisms. They work amazing as long as we don't get in the way. But we often get in the way. We're good at that. We like to just play a little game where we throw a bunch of stuff in there and see how it goes. Yeah, go ahead.
Where does coffee fall on the scale of
Coffee?
good or bad?
Good question. So the trick with coffee is it certainly should be organic because a lot of all non-organic coffee is loaded with pesticides. They use a lot of pesticides in production, so definitely organic. Filtered water, right? So that's kind of basic, so you don't have the chlorine and all of that. And then it depends on the state of your anxiety/adrenal gland function. So if you're already in an anxious state, if you already have trouble sleeping, if your nervous system is already sort of maxed out, then I wouldn't add caffeine in any shape, including coffee. So it acts a stimulant just like the sugar. So, and you know, it can cause sugar cravings. So even if you're not putting sugar in your coffee, having that caffeine later on will cause sugar cravings. So you have to be aware of that as well. So I've seen people lose weight just by cutting out coffee. Even though there wasn't any sugar in there, it was just black coffee. Cutting out that, they'll actually lose weight from that because it's stimulating enough where they never get into sort of a healing state. So their body's just sort of like, it's like barely coping, and then they can relax enough and heal enough that they'll actually start to lose weight. So it's a concern. So it's sad, but it's a concern.
Is that the same thing with dark chocolate?
Same thing with dark chocolate. There's a lot less caffeine in chocolate than most coffee, so it needs to be limited. For sure. But yeah, so the least amount of sugar, smallest amount that you can get by and still feel happy at the end of the day.
I was just wondering if you've ever heard of a link between magnesium deficiency and asthma?
Certainly there could be, yeah. So in my experience, it's not something I've heard of specifically. In my experience, anything can cause anything. So we say that's kind of a mantra around here, which sounds like a cop-out, but actually it's the truth. Because what we see, that like that triangle that Emily drew, is that those symptoms at the top, so asthma is a symptom, actually. It's a symptom, yeah, it's a diagnosis, right? That's where we get it a little bit, it's a little tricky. In the medical world, they'll tell you, like, you have this. They sort of like give you something, like, here you go, have this. That's yours. No. That's just something that you're experiencing right now. So asthma is something that the person is experiencing, but there's an underlying organ dysfunction, nutrient deficiency. If corrected, like it could be magnesium, if corrected, could greatly improve. So we see that all the time. Allergies, asthma. I have lots of people that have seasonal allergies and they just go away when they're on the right program, which is cool. It's pretty exciting. They like it. You know, it can be pretty miserable. And that's true of everything. That's true of diabetes. That's true of, you know, whatever diagnosis, like the word attached to it is something that we've assigned to a bunch of symptoms, basically. So yes, I wouldn't be surprised if that helped too. And that's what I was going to say too about mental health. So, you know, the depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, like there's all these words, right? There's a book this big, and it's all words that have to do with mental health. And they have a code after them, and that code is what you bill insurance with. So you have to have a code in order to bill insurance. So you're going to get a code, all right? But don't be the code, all right? Don't just like be like, this is my code. Put it right here. Be like, I'm depressed. You know, don't do that. Be like, oh, I'm struggling right now, and there's some things going on. I'm not saying that, you know, don't bill your insurance for it, because they should pay you. Put the money in there, let them pay you for it. But ultimately, what we got to do is, okay, well, why? You know, what's going on, and what can we do to get rid of it? Right? And nutrition's a huge part of that. So that's really the idea. Okay. So it's not that you're just sort of like stuck with this label of these numbers for the rest of your life, because they're whatever they are. You know, depression is hormone imbalance. It's too much sugar, it's not enough sleep, something difficult going on in your life that you have to find the tools to handle. All those things could have the same code. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Emily, I have a question for you, but you don't have to answer it if it's too personal.
No problem.
Is you talked about anxiety and depression. Were you on medication and did you get off of it? Like prescribed medication?
Yes.
As opposed to the...
So my doctor, my pediatric doctor at the time, because I was still, I think I was 19, so I was still seeing her. She prescribed me an anxiety medication. I can't remember which one it was. And I took it for about maybe 2 months, and the side effects were just too much for me to not notice them. Like things like I would take it and I would feel heaviness in my chest, and my throat would almost like an allergic reaction to it. Just things in my personal life went way south, and there was just too many things that I noticed that I was like, okay, this isn't right. And I know a lot of people are kind of sucked into the medication's your answer, it's your solution, and it's what we can do for you. But my mentality was kind of like Dr. Shannon's, like, this isn't it. This isn't what's right, because the right thing isn't gonna cause those side effects. The right thing is gonna take care of the problem and also take care of my body. So that's kind of what I experienced personally with the medication side of things. Yes, you're welcome.
And just to say, like, I'm not like saying anybody, if like you take medications, you know somebody who took medications, I'm not saying like you're bad, stop them. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is maybe it's not the whole solution. And if you're not there yet, please don't go there without finding, every possible option. If you're on medication or know someone who's on medication, those types of medications, like the anti-anxiety, antidepressants, the Adderall, the stimulants, those should not be done, like stopped. They have to be weaned off of very carefully. So it's not something that I don't recommend, like, oh, these are bad, I'm going to throw them out. Do not do that. That's actually very dangerous. But what I am going to tell you is that over the years, I've taken care of lots of people who have been on medications, either short-term or long-term, that come in and say, I need off of these medications. They're not really working anymore. I have lots of side effects, but when I try to stop them, I feel a lot worse. And there's a very big withdrawal effect from these medications, because what they're doing is they're altering brain chemistry. And when you alter brain chemistry, you have to slowly change it back. So that's the idea, where you sort of wean very slowly off of medication at the same time where you're supporting the body and whatever it needs. So as you're putting the nutrients back in and rebuilding, the medication has to be changed very slowly so that you don't get side effects, because otherwise the brain goes, what? Like, I haven't been doing that because the medication's been doing it for me. You see, so it's a dangerous little endeavor, but it can be done. People do it all the time. So they come into us for help with that. And I can't take people off medications, or neither can Emily, because it's not our license, but we've worked with them and their doctors to help them wean off successfully and safely. So that's just, but I just want to say, I don't think it's the total solution for everything. That's the idea, right? So I think that's what we're led to believe, right? If you talk about mainstream medicine, usually it's like, well, this is the solution, but there's just more to it. It's often chemical, but in a different way. There's no way to measure the neurotransmitters in the brain to see, so it's kind of a guessing game also. So it happens a lot of times. You had one medication and it might seem like it works for a little while, and then you end up on another one, and another one, and another one, until somebody comes in and they say, I'm on 3 antidepressants, but I'm still depressed, and now I have these other symptoms, right? It's a thing we see often. That's true for all medications, by the way. These just happen to be a little more dangerous in the realm of being able to come off, okay? So yeah, it's not to invalidate anybody if that's something that you've done or were thinking about doing or had done in the past. I mean, it is what it is, We don't judge around here, we just help, so. Yeah? Yeah. And on that note, I'll end. So if you guys want to know more about any of the things that we do here, any of the products that we mentioned tonight, or any specific questions that you have, we're happy to stay around and answer them. Otherwise, I'll let you go enjoy your evening. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.